Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Starting right now, you can grab Kowabana Volume 1, 2, 3, and 5 from the US and UK Amazon stores for just 99 cents each. Find stories never before featured on the podcast and help support the show. Sales last until Thursday, 13th of June, so don't miss out. On this week's episode, we're looking at two tales of supernatural stalkers. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even though nobody else was around? What if someone really was there, but you were the only person who could see them? Our first story for this week features a young man who works night shifts at a factory in the countryside. He notices a woman in red who seems very out of place, but he soon realizes that each time he sees her, she's getting closer and closer to his house. Who is she? And what does she want? Find out in Strangeness on the Night Shift. Last week I was working the night shift at the factory. The sound of machinery, air, and other loud noises means it's difficult to hear someone unless you get up close to them. I was working as usual when I suddenly heard the sound of heels walking right behind me. I turned around, but nothing was there. Work finished at 5 in the morning, and on my way out into the car park, there was a woman in a red dress, an oversized red hat, standing there. It was early morning. The sun was up, and everything was kind of bright, so I couldn't see her very well. But it was odd for a woman in such clothes to be all the way out in the countryside at that time. The next day, I asked some of the other guys about it, but nobody had seen her. I figured I was just tired then. That same day, I heard the sound of heels again, but when I turned around, nobody was there. I started to think I really was exhausted, and when morning came, there was no woman in red in the parking lot. I told myself I must have been imagining things, but suddenly, there she was, on the road back, surrounded by rice fields. She was dressed exactly the same, only this time, she was grinning. The only people around this area were the old folks who worked the fields, so I instinctively grew scared. But again, I blamed it on lack of sleep and tried to forget about it. The next day, I sensed something behind me as I worked, so I suddenly turned around. But of course, nothing was there. I grew more and more irritated. It was like I was going crazy. I was more angry than scared by that point. "What the hell?" I muttered. And then I clearly heard the sound of footsteps running behind me. Not only that, but they were fast. My sense of foreboding grew, and I decided to take the next day off. On the way home, she wasn't in the parking lot, nor was she on the rice field-lined road back. What the hell? She's not around? I thought. However, when I reached a small bridge, about 5 or 6 kilometers away, there she was. Her hat covered most of her face, but she was grinning underneath it again. She followed my car with her eyes and turned her body to face the same direction. I looked at her in the rear view mirror. She watched me the whole time. When I thought about it, I realized she was getting closer to my house each time. At this pace, she'd reach it by the next day. Shit, I thought, and immediately called my mother when I got back. She was good with all things supernatural. "Yep, you sure are in trouble," she said. "This is certainly no good. Did you do something?" "I didn't do anything," I said. "Nothing I can remember." "Well, you might have picked her up from somewhere. Either way, you gotta deal with this now. I'll take you to visit my friend's temple right away." We ended up driving 3 hours that morning to her friend's temple. I heard her call Dad before we left, and her voice was shaking as she cried. My mother's a strong woman. I've never once seen her cry, and even when she fought with Dad, she always came out on top. And yet, she was crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "If worst comes to worst, I'll go in his place." What the hell? Was I gonna die? Go in my place? I asked her about it, but she said nothing other than, "Get in the car." I was tired from the night shift, so Mum drove, but about 5 minutes after we left home, that woman was there. I was in the passenger's seat, so it was the first time I clearly saw her. She was wearing the same clothes as always, and that big hat. But I saw her face. Her clothes made her look young, but she was clearly older. She looked around 60, her eyes bloodshot and brow covered in wrinkles. She had a terrifying expression on her face, and again, she was grinning. I was so scared that I gasped out loud, and my mother noticed. "Don't look," she said. "Don't look at her eyes. Look down." Her loud voice shocked me so much that I looked down and closed my eyes. Then I heard something like laughter right next to my ear. I groaned in fear again. "Don't look at anything. Don't listen to anything. Cover your eyes and ears," my mother told me, and then turned the volume on the radio up. Before I knew it, I was asleep and apparently dreaming. I still remember it clearly, even now. A woman was in the middle of a forest, the grass growing wild, and she said, "Look this way. Look this way." I was scared and tried to run, but no matter where I went, she called to me, "Look this way." Then right as she appeared before me, my mother woke me up. We were at the temple, and I'd wet myself. Tears ran down my face, and my nose was snotty, yet I was so scared that I trembled, even though it was the middle of summer. I didn't have any other pants with me, so I got out of the car as I was, and my mother lent me her shoulder as we went inside. For some reason, I was so weak that I couldn't walk, and when we got inside, a monk came to greet us. "Where did you pick that up?" he said. "When? What were you doing?" He assaulted me with questions. I told him that she was slowly getting closer to my house from work, so he asked where I worked and where I had last seen her. "I work in..." and I last saw her in the car, about 5 minutes from home, I said. The monk then ran towards the main temple building. I stood there, frozen, no idea what was going on. A different monk came out and told us to come inside. I was pathetically weak, so my mother carried me in. Several monks were gathered before a large statue of Buddha. They told me to sit in the middle of them. I did as asked, and they began chanting. The chants grew more fervent, and suddenly, incredible drowsiness swept over me. I was about to pass out, when suddenly, something whispered in my ear. "I finally found you." Shocked, the moment I opened my eyes, the monks hit me on the shoulder with a long pole. I think something they used during training at the temple. Then I passed out. When I came back to, I'd wet myself again and was surrounded by water. I was also crying again. I started on a cushion in the middle of the room, but by that point, I was lying down in the corner. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, and everything hurt so bad that I couldn't. The monks helped me up and sat me down in the middle of the room again. They poured sake over my head, and this time a single monk stood before me, chanting. When he was done, my body felt somewhat lighter. I was still unable to walk, however, so 2 monks helped me to the bath and stayed with me. When I had finally calmed down, my mother came in crying and hugged me. "Oh, thank God! Thank God!" Then the monk told me everything. It's rather long, so I'll cut most of it out. The woman I saw was apparently the local Shinigami, the god of death. Originally, she summoned the dead during Obon, and the locals held a festival for her during July, which is when she came to visit this world. The festival was a sign for her to come and take someone back with her, but I had apparently seen her before the festival. The reason she appeared beforehand was because somebody was trying to get her to take someone from this world in exchange for bringing someone back from that world. That needed a sacrifice using a cursed spirit, or something like that. Sorry if it's all a little bit difficult to understand. Basically, someone was praying persistently to that god in order to resurrect a dead person, and she was trying to take me in exchange. The reason my mother was crying was because she was born in the same area I worked, so she knew the story. It was a taboo subject, however, and when she talked about going in my place in a worst-case scenario, she was prepared to become the sacrifice instead of me. That god is worshipped on the mountain behind my work, but the area is forbidden to enter. People said that nothing good ever came of praying to her. I spent about a week at the temple after that, barely able to move. And then, when I got home, I was finally able to walk a little, with a cane and handrails. I could barely even use chopsticks. My mother explained to work what happened to me, and they told me to take some time off, fully paid. The monk said if I hadn't recovered by Obon, then I never would. I want him to be lying, but I think he's telling the truth. When I think about that woman, I'm still terrified. I keep the charm the monk gave me with me at all times. Many commenters on this story pointed out the red woman's similarity to Hashaku-sama, which I noticed myself while reading it for the first time. It's a wonder we haven't seen more stories inspired by her, considering how popular she is, but it's hard to deny that the woman in this story wasn't in some way modelled on her, even all the way down to her hat. Our next story is a popular one amongst Japanese readers. A young man is looking for a part-time summer job and finds one that seems perfect. It's a ryokan, or Japanese inn, and it's a job that will allow him to travel and work at the same time. It soon becomes clear, however, that something is dreadfully wrong. This one's called Ryokan Job Offer. This all took place exactly 2 years ago. I wanted to travel, so I was looking for a part-time job. The days were hot and sweat poured off me as I phoned about jobs. But for some reason, nobody had anything. I threw myself on the floor, worn out, and muttered expletives as I thumbed through the pages of a magazine advertising jobs. What a shitty job market. In order to save money, I didn't use any electricity during the day. Light from the setting sun, that didn't seem to want to go down, streamed into my dim room. The window panes cast a shadow like a cross on the floor. In the distance, a train rumbled. When I closed my eyes, I could smell dinner cooking in another apartment. What do I have? Cup noodles? I dragged my lethargic body up and went to put the magazine away. Suddenly, the page flicked over. There was an ad for a job working at a ryokan in a certain prefecture. I won't say which. It was the exact place I was thinking I wanted to visit. The job was only for summer, and the pay was not very good, but it had a place to sleep and food to eat, so it strongly grabbed my attention. I'd been eating nothing but cup noodles. There, I'd be able to eat catering or homemade food, not to mention it was a place I wanted to visit in the first place. I called immediately. Yes, thank you for calling. This is the ryokan. Hi. I saw your job ad. Are you still looking for people? Oh, please wait a moment. She sounded like a young woman. I heard a low male voice on the other end, perhaps the owner of the ryokan, as they whispered. My heart beat wildly in my chest, and for some reason, I found myself sitting up straight and polite while I waited. Finally, someone returned to the phone. It was a different voice. Hello? You're inquiring about the job? Yes, I saw you were looking for workers. I'd love to work if the position is still open. Ah, thank you. We'd love to have you. When can you start? Anytime, I replied. Okay, well, how about tomorrow? I'm sorry, what's your name? Cameo. Cameo-kun, huh? We're looking forward to seeing you soon. Everything went swimmingly. What luck! I always recorded my calls so I didn't forget what was said. I played the call back and noted down the important parts. I would be staying there for the duration, so I made sure to note that I needed my insurance card as well. There was a black and white photo of the inn on the magazine ad. It looked cozy and surrounded by nature. My job having been decided so suddenly, and where I wanted to go no less, was a huge relief. But something was odd. I hummed while making my cup noodles. Even the humming seemed odd. The sun had disappeared at some point, and a warm, damp breeze was blowing in the open window. While slurping my noodles, I suddenly realized what was wrong. The terms were great. I could save money and travel at the same time. Plus, there was a girl there. It was a ryokan, so you never knew what might happen. But something was odd. The window glass became a mirror in the darkness. My face reflected in it. For some reason, I wasn't happy at all. I didn't know why, but I was actually really depressed. The face that looked back at me in the window was lifeless and old. The next day, I woke up with a raging headache. The pain was debilitating. Was it a cold? I staggered to the bathroom to brush my teeth. My gums were bleeding. I looked in the mirror and was shocked. There were massive bags under my eyes, and my skin was white. I looked just like I have to refuse the job, I thought, but I'd already packed everything to go the night before. But I didn't want to go. Then the phone rang. Good morning. I'm from the ryokan. Is this Cameo-san? Yes, I'm just about to leave. Okay. Are you all right? My apologies, but you sound a little... I'm sorry. I just woke up, so... Don't push yourself too hard. When you get here, feel free to use the hot spring first. It's your first day, so take your time. We're not that busy anyway. I'm okay, but thank you. I hung up and got ready to leave. I was grateful for their kindness. As soon as I hung up the phone, however, I was overcome with a shivering fit. My head swam as I opened the door. I just gotta get to the ryokan first. I staggered towards the station, so much that people turned back to look at me as they passed. Soon, it started to rain. I didn't have an umbrella on me, so by the time I reached the station, I was drenched. Painful coughs racked my body. I don't want to go. I finally reached the station, dripping wet, and bought my ticket. When I saw my own hand, I was shocked. It was dry and cracked. It was wet, but the skin was all cracked, just like an old person. Have I come down with something bad? I hope I can safely make it to the ryokan. Clinging to the handrails, I dragged myself up the stairs, taking numerous breaks along the way. I had some time until the train arrived. I collapsed on the bench and sat there, struggling to breathe. My voice rasped. My hands and feet were numb. My heart pounded with waves of pain, and when I coughed, blood landed at my feet. I wiped my mouth with my handkerchief. It was covered in blood. I looked at the platform through cloudy eyes. Just gotta get to the ryokan. Finally, the train roared into the station, and the doors opened. I watched the people getting on and off, and then got up off the bench. My back was in agony. I staggered towards the door. My entire body hurt. Just gotta get on the train. When I reached the door, an old woman with a face like a demon suddenly rushed at me. I went flying back onto the platform. The old woman stumbled, but then she charged at me again. I started scuffling with her on the platform. It's a little sad, but I was no match for her. Stop! Just stop it! I need to get on the train! Why? Why? She pinned me to the ground and glared at me. I need to get to the ryokan! Finally, a station attendant came running over and pulled her off. The train was already gone. I couldn't stand up, so I sat in the middle of the gathering crowd. The old lady caught her breath and then finally spoke. "You were being drawn there. That was too close." Then she left. The station attendant asked me a few questions and then let me go. I left the station to return home. When I did, I suddenly felt better, and my voice went back to normal. I looked in the mirror and my complexion looked better as well. How odd. I put my stuff down when I got home and stopped to have a cigarette. After a short break, I decided to call the ryokan and let them know I couldn't go. When I called, an emotionless voice answered. "This phone number is not currently in use." I tried again. "This phone number is not currently in use." I was confused. That number called me just that morning. How odd. Then I remembered the recording I made of the call. I pressed rewind. The phone rang and then picked up.
"Yes, thank you for calling. This is the ryokan."
A chill ran through my body. I remembered speaking to a woman, but the voice on the recording was that of a man. "Yes, I saw you were looking for workers. I'd love to work if the position is still open."
"Oh, please wait a moment."
There was some background noise, and then I heard something. I rewound again.
"Oh, please wait a moment."
Old. Ease.
I rewound.
Old. Ease.
I rewound.
So cold. I'm gonna freeze.
It was a child's voice. Not only that, but I could hear the voices of numerous people in the background, moaning. Sweat dripped off my forehead. I jumped back from the phone. The recording continued. "Ah, thank you. We'd love to have you. When can you start?" "Anytime." It was the conversation I remembered having, but I had spoken with a man. This voice was that of an old person. "Cameo-kun, huh? We're looking forward to seeing you soon." Then the call ended. I broke out into a cold sweat, and it started pouring rain outside. I was unable to move, frozen to the spot, but then I finally started to calm down. Then, the recording started again. It was the call from that morning, but I was the only one talking.
"Die, die, 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 die.
"Yes, I'm just about to leave."
Die, 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 die.
"Ah, I'm sorry. I just woke up, so..."
Die, 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 die.
"Ah, I'm okay, but thank you." I pulled the battery out of the phone. I screamed, my throat hoarse. What the hell was that? What the hell? What was going on? I grabbed the magazine and searched for the ad with trembling hands. Something wasn't right. My hands shook. Then I found it. The page with the ryokan was crinkled and old, even though it had been fine the day before. It was covered in creases and yellowed. Only that page looked old and faded, like it was from a magazine decades ago. A burnt-down ryokan looked back at me from the photo. An article was written beside it. 30 dead. The kitchen went up in flames. The burnt corpse of what they assumed to be the owner was found in the kitchen, so they thought it happened while he was cooking. The customers were too slow in escaping, and so they were also burnt to death. What the? It wasn't a job ad. I sat there in silence. The wind blew the pages of the magazine over. Tired, I put a stone on top of it, and it stopped. The rain outside weakened. Suddenly, I was wrapped in silence. Then the phone rang. We are just a short amount away from extending each episode of Kowabana to 45 minutes in length. If you'd like to help support the show, get early access and over 25 bonus episodes at the same time, head over to patreon.com/TaraADevlin. You can also get daily stories over at kowabana.net or on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.